Hello and welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell, and my co-host for this episode is a long-tenured member of the DK Vine community. You might remember him from such DK Vine affairs as DK Vine's Stream of Thieves. But he also has an extensive footprint in the world of animation, and he's probably one of the few people who is able to play couch co-op for this game that we're discussing today. So I figured what better person to have on the conversation with me than amazing DJ Dustin Jackson.
Hey, hello everyone. Please save your applause.
I can't, there, you get that much.
Oh, you guys flatter me. Thank you.
Yes, welcome to the show. Welcome to the conversation. Like I said, is this your first time on the conversation?
Yes.
I can't remember. Okay.
This is
I've done too many of these things. No, you've been on our Sea of Thieves streams as a regular fourth member of the crew that we usually rotate in and out, because it's usually me and Cameron and usually Jeff, and then usually a fourth that we like to alternate. And a lot of times you're the fourth. So I feel like I've done conversations with you because I've discussed rare games and DKU games and Platonic games, mostly all that fit within that Venn diagram. I've discussed them with you quite a bit, so it feels like we've done one of these podcasts together, but this is actually your first conversation.
Yes, this is my first time actually being on the show. Long-time listener, first-time co-hoster.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, anyway, so yeah, I thought you'd be perfect for this. So we're going to be discussing the new Battletoads today. And of course, we've been upfront about it. We said, even if the new Battletoads wasn't what we consider part of the Donkey Kong universe, and I'll get into all of that legalese here in just a few minutes, even if it wasn't, we would still dedicate an episode to it. So this was always on the cards no matter what, because, we are one of the biggest rare fan sites around. Definitely one of the oldest surviving rare fan sites. And, it seems a little silly for a rare game to come out in 2020 and DK Vine not talk about it because it doesn't have a goldfish in it, or because some arbitrary legal document that's based on the sitcoms of the 1980s and 1990s. It would be just ludicrous for us to ignore a rare game. And so we're not going to do that. Going forward, DK Vine is going to talk, at the very least, a little bit about every Platonic game that comes out. But, in the back of our head, too, we're always still hoping, hey, maybe this will be part of the DKU. And we will have definitive answers for you in just a few minutes. So I should just warn everyone, there will be spoilers. There will be spoilers on this podcast. So if you have not played the new Battletoads and you don't want any plot elements ruined for you, stop listening right now. I will limit all spoilers to just Act 1. But the problem with that is Act 1 has quite a few revelations in it that might ruin your enjoyment of the game if you want to walk in unspoiled. The whole premise is laid out in Act 1. So, yeah, wait to listen to this if you still haven't played it and you're planning to. But if you've only progressed a little bit in the game, if you've played all of Act 1, you're good. You're solid. You're not going to get anything else spoiled for you. All right, so to Dustin, don't spoil anything for them.
Oh, I'll try not to.
Except Act 1.
Yeah.
All right, but we're going to get into all of that, whether it's DKU or not. We're going to rip off that bandage right after I do some due diligence. And that due diligence is to remind you that DK Vine's on Patreon at dkvine.com/Patreon. We offer rewards. You can listen to the conversation live as we record, or, just a day early if you want to listen to the finished product. And you can also get physical rewards. And pretty soon, we're going to be, probably later this week, I think we're launching the chance to have annual memberships at a discount. It's something new Patreon's offering, so we're going to extend it. So you can back DK Vine at an annual lump sum fee with some percentage shaved off for your wallet. So stay tuned there. dkvine.com/Patreon. Your support helps keep the lights on at DK Vine headquarters. So thank you. I appreciate it. Also, don't forget, we're on social media. I took a week off. Almost a week off. It was like half a week off last weekend. And it was like, this is the first time in 4 years I'm actually taking a holiday from DK Vine. I say that because I still updated the social media every day because I couldn't break my streak. I've updated the Facebook page like every day since the middle of 2013. The Twitter, I make sure at the very least something's happening on the Twitter every day, since I took it over. So you can find us at dkvine.com/Twitter, dkvine.com/Facebook. We're also on Instagram. Joe Mudd runs our Instagram. So, if you like the Donkey Kong universe, if you like Rare, if you like Platonic, be sure to give us a follow on any of those. And also follow us on YouTube, where you can get videos and this show. If you like to listen to things on YouTube, but you don't like to watch things on YouTube, you're in for a treat. That's dkvine.com/YouTube. Also, just a quick reminder, nobody has found the missing episode of the Kongversation Season 6 yet, and I would really like to stop talking about this. So the first person to do so and at us on Twitter with where it's located gets an autographed copy of Sea of Thieves #1, signed by the author Jeremy Whiteley. And there's a Battletoads comic book coming out too. That was just announced. So there's gonna like lots of expanded media from Rare with everything they're doing now. But you can get on the ground floor of the Sea of Thieves comic book, get the first issue autographed by the author, if you find where the missing episode of Season 6 is. So not only do you get this high-valued reward, but you also get to listen to an entire episode of the Kongversation that not many people have heard, except the privileged few where I'm like, hey, do you want to hear the missing episode? Here it is. But anyway, Dustin, I guess you'll have to be part of that crowd now because you've co-hosted the Kongversation, so now you're ineligible to actually find the missing episode. So I can just link it to you.
Oh, thank you.
Or send it to you, or send you the treasure map for where it is. And then your Saturday is going to be made. Hey, because we're recording this on a Saturday.
Oh,
and
man!
So after we're done, he's going to listen to it. Also, nobody has listed the Bond title per episode in Season 7. So in every episode of Season 7, I list a James Bond movie, novel, or short story title. I just drop it casually in the middle of conversation or Kongversation, and you're like, what? Why did Hyle just say Octopussy? That's weird and vulgar and crass. But there's a reason, and that reason is this stupid contest. The first person to add us on Twitter with the list of every Bond title per episode in the 7th season of the Kongversation, why, they get a Pierce Brosnan Funko Pop and their choice of Sea of Thieves or Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair. A physical copy, a digital copy, whatever platform you want it on. If you want Sea of Thieves on Steam, you can get that. If you want Yooka-Laylee and Impossible Lair on PlayStation 4, you'll get that. But, as time goes on, these rewards will get more and more irrelevant. I don't want 2040 to be rolling around and be like, hey, you'll get a free copy of Sea of Thieves, the servers of which have been shut down for 5 years. I don't know. Hopefully Sea of Thieves lasts our entire lifetimes, but you know what I mean. It's a reward to strive for in the here and now. So please get to work. Free video games, free Pierce Brosnan toy. Who wouldn't want that in their homes? All right, Dustin. Battletoads. Let's talk about it. So I need to clear the air a little bit because I have to be perfectly honest before I discuss Battletoads in any real way, because this is not a discussion we've really had much on the Kongversation in its entire, 7.5 year run so far, is Battletoads. And the reason, besides past Battletoads games not being considered part of the DKU, is that I was just never a huge Battletoads fan. It wasn't that I disliked Battletoads. Far from it, but it just wasn't my thing as a kid. As far as beat 'em up games go, I think I always considered them at the top of their genre, like a cut above the rest. But I was sort of a tasteless, simple child who was more apt to go for the licensed games of properties I already knew and loved, like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And, the NES game, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game, which was a port of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade game. It was one of my favorite games on the NES, at least for like a year or so. I remember playing the hell out of that on Saturday mornings. I would wake up and boot up my NES and play through the burning hotel. That was the first level, beating up foot soldiers. And I liked it, but that was because it was a Ninja Turtles game that had a lot of the characters from the cartoon that I loved. And it was something I could wrap my head around. You walk around, you beat up bad guys with your Ninja Turtles weapon. It wasn't very complex. And while it could get difficult, it never got, beyond my small little brain. And, it's funny that I like that game so much, but never got into Battletoads, because the Battletoads were created by Rare as an in-house brand to sort of ride the Ninja Turtles craze and had put their own stamp on it without having to, fight for the Ninja Turtles license. And the original Battletoads came out in 1991, which was the height of my Ninja Turtles fandom. My craze, that I was all about the Ninja Turtles for a couple of years before I just drifted away from them. And I looking back, I probably was a little too young to appreciate Battletoads for what it was, kind of this cheeky, not so much parody of the Ninja Turtles, because it didn't really have any aspects of that, but it really just, hey, let's create these cold-blooded humanoid figures, very much of the early 90s. That the whole aesthetic and vibe and just like radical dude kind of aesthetic that Funky Kong is very much a tribute to as well. But yeah, that was Battletoads, and it was more sophisticated than any of the Ninja Turtles games for sure, and also very, very hard. And I think the Battletoads game I played the most, weirdly, was Battletoads Double Dragon. And that was just due to my friend Elliot owning it. And so we would play it on his Super Nintendo. But honestly, I think I just found them all a little bit too difficult. And that was at an age where I wasn't really willing to put in the time and the dedication to master a video game that was just out and out challenging, a brutal affair that you had to really get good at. You really had to dedicate yourself to mastering all the nuances, figuring out all the tricks. The only way I would really go about it was, hey, I have a game genie, let me cheat so I can see all the stuff in the game and kind of feel strong and invincible without actually having to kind of get beat down and just feel like I'm failing at this by being bad at the game before I can get good at the game. And it wasn't until Donkey Kong Country came out, really, that I learned you could absolutely love a video game so much that you wanted to dedicate yourself to beating it the right way, the faithful way. And then kind of become a zealot for that game. Donkey Kong Country, it took me a long time to find that game for me, because even though I liked and played the hell out of the Super Mario Brothers titles and Super Mario World and various games along the way, Street Fighter, I had my Street Fighter phase, but Donkey Kong Country was the first game where I was like, whoa, this is what I've been waiting for. This speaks to every facet of who I am as a growing young adult. And this is it. This is where my heart is. And I'm not going to sully this by cheating. And, I went back a couple of times to Battletoads in the year or two after DKC, especially after learning that it had been developed by Rare, that Rare was this entity that had been around before Donkey Kong Country and had actually made all of these games that I had played in my youth leading up to DKC. But I don't know, by then, by like early to mid 1995, honestly, Battletoads seemed like this weird relic. And it was really just like Rare's big franchise before they were rebranded as Rareware and became known as the studio for Donkey Kong. And that's amusing because the last Battletoads game, the arcade game, came out in 1994, the very year that Donkey Kong Country and Killer Instinct debuted. So there wasn't much like jump in time between the two. It just did seem like this huge gulf between the two franchises. And I chalk that up a little bit to when you're a kid, time moves immeasurably slower than it does when you're an adult, because then just time, like 5 years feels like what 1 year felt like as a kid. So anyway, all that being said, I never disliked Battletoads. It just felt like this game I rented and I played with my friends, but never really fell in love with. And after becoming a huge Rare fan, of course, I had a little bit of more vested interest in Battletoads. I mean, I had to, because I, respected it and its origins by virtue of who created it. And, it's like, whoa, David Wise did the music for Battletoads? What? Whoa, Kev Bayless worked on Battletoads? What? But I always wondered, going forward, especially like after launching DK Vine and really dedicating myself to studying about and talking about Rare's output, if Rare would ever revisit it. Because it kind of felt weird that they did just abandon the franchise once Donkey Kong Country came out. And then that really helped seal that impression in my head that it belonged to a different, earlier era of Rare, almost the same way that Saberwolf was to Battletoads. And as the years progressed, there were always rumors, right? There were always rumors that Rare was going to revive Battletoads. And at one time, they were planning on doing a Game Boy Advance remake of the original Battletoads, but it never got off the ground. And I thought Grab by the Ghoulies, honestly, was a great modern take on the beat-em-up genre. Whenever anybody would talk about what they would want to see from a new Battletoads, I would just point them to Ghoulies and be like, well, actually, Rare did do a new beat-em-up game that feels very much like an evolution of that genre, sort of elevating a somewhat monotonous and tedious style of gameplay from the modern lens and making it something new and fresh and exciting. But anyway, the Battletoads revival rumors really did become prevalent in the rumor mill around 2015 when we were on the cusp of the Renaissance. And, Rare had released Kinect Sports Rivals, and there was all of the really awful, painful restructuring at Rare, and it was like a dark time to be a Rare fan. And then 2015, everything started to change, and Phil Spencer was wearing a Battletoad shirt, and everybody was like, oh my god, what does that mean? What does that mean? And then, the news that Rare was gonna be showing off something at E3 2015, And, we got the heads up on that, and we actually got out to Los Angeles and attended our first E3. And I remember waiting in line at the Xbox briefing that year, early morning on the streets of Los Angeles, and we were in line next to somebody I think of as this snuff film guy, because he kept talking about this amazing sexual snuff film he had. I don't know, it was weird. Go back and listen to those conversations for a closer in time analysis of that weirdo. But it was just the most grating couple of hours, because he just kept talking about horrific stuff. But he also talked about how it was absolutely certain that Rare was there to show off a new Battletoads game, right? He was, and he didn't know, even though we told him that we were there because we ran a Rare fan site, and we were really up on what Rare was doing, and he was like, oh no, it's gonna be Battletoads. And then he wanted to talk to us about Halo, and we were like, dude, we don't know anything about Halo, we're Rare fans. And he couldn't process what that meant, so he just kind of zoned out finally. So we broke him by just being regular DK Vine diehards and not wanting to engage him on anything else. But anyway, so that being said, of course, Rare did not show off a new Battletoads that year, although it did feature heavily in the promotion for Rare Replay. Battletoads was one of the big things, along with Banjo and Conquer, that they were branding around Rare Replay. Hey, Rare is back, and here's our classic IPs that we've not really been able to celebrate since 2009. Hey, isn't this great? And, there was the Rash statue. They gave out Battletoads foam hands. I still have that in the DK Vine office here. It's up in the corner, and I've been wanting to break it out over the last couple of days. Now that Battletoads has a renewed importance, not just among Rare fans, but for DK Vine as well. And even with Sea of Thieves, there seemed to be this notion that Rare had to be working on a new Battletoads game. And I remember when I visited Rare in 2016, we were not allowed on one floor of one of the barns. And that was where the Louise O'Connor project was beginning to take shape. And there were whispers among the crowd there, could it be Battletoads? Is that where they're making Battletoads? Because of course they're making Battletoads. But of course, that was Everwild that was starting to begin development. But finally then, at E3 2018, there was the teaser trailer. A new Battletoads was coming from Delilah Studios with partnership with Rare. And then we finally saw the trailer at E3 2019, the much derided trailer, which always amuses me because this is a point I bring up time and again. When you're at E3, Dustin, you are in sort of this bubble, right? Where negativity doesn't really reach you. When you're out there and you're experiencing things and you're like, oh, a new Battletoads trailer, that looks cool. And then you get back to your apartment or your hotel room or wherever you're staying, and you log online and you goes, oh yeah, let's see what people think about Battletoads. What? People hate it? How can they hate it? I haven't heard anything bad about it all day long. So it's kind of this cold splash of water a lot of times. And that's been the case, I think, since DK Vine has attended E3 in person every year. It's just been this thing oh man, I can't wait to get back and talk to everyone about this. And then you get back and you find out everyone hates it. And then you're suddenly on the defense trying to defend something you have no idea why people hate. But we'll get into some of that as the episode goes on. The weird receptions it's had in some corners, and how to process it. But anyway, so a year passed after E3 2019, and we just had the Xbox Game Showcase in July, which was sort of Xbox Studios' way of dealing with the absence of E3. They had this instead, and there's no news on Battletoads there. And a lot of the rumor mongers were just using that as a launching pad to say, hey, it looks like Battletoads has been canceled because everybody hated the way it looked. Nope. Craig Duncan said there would be news soon, and then just a little over a week, I think it was like 8 days after that, it was announced that Battletoads would be released on Xbox One, Windows 10, and Steam, simultaneous release on August 20th. And so here we are. So I was on vacation and dealing with a lot of anxiety and stress, depression, stuff I normally dealt with. It's been amplified as this year has gone on. So I just decided I had to get away. Got a cabin in the mountains. It was amazing, but I knew I had to be back in time for Battletoads. And so came back and found out that I actually had a media copy waiting for me, so I got to play it a little early, and I played it, found out some things, and man, I was dying to talk about it. I was like, oh man, I'm under NDA, I can't discuss this big thing, and then I realized I had to do the legwork to figuring out what this revelation meant. And so I was ready. I was ready on launch. Had the news article ready to go. So let's just get into it, Dustin.
That sounds good to me.
I've been talking quite a bit here, setting us up. But so Battletoads, of course, predates the notion of the Donkey Kong universe, which starts by DK Vine's definition with Donkey Kong Country. The Donkey Kong universe is basically the Donkey Kong Country universe, and I really wish we would have branded it as such, because it would be far less confusing for our case to be made here. But the Donkey Kong Country universe, the Donkey Kong universe, what it is basically the shared universe Rare set out to create, not, on purpose. It was they kind of just stumbled into it and then started having fun with it. But basically Donkey Kong Country and all of the spin-offs from Donkey Kong Country. And that's been Banjo-Kazooie, Conker, 3 Star Fox games. We won't get into that. Although it is kind of an appropriate thing to bring up, because that is a case where a franchise can be made DKU, albeit temporarily and not on a permanent basis. It's just based on the characters that are in it and the intent. This is a little bit less severe of a case than Star Fox Adventures was, which originally started life as Dinosaur Planet, which originally started life as a game starring Timber the Tiger. The one common element among all 3 versions, Tricky, the dinosaur Tricky from Diddy Kong Racing, who somehow survived to the bitter end. But yeah, the Donkey Kong universe is, I hear it referred to as Hyle Russell's Fanon. And I'm like, what? Hold on. Now, it's not just that. It is a deliberate thing that does exist. And the developers have acknowledged it from time to time and have had fun with it. And, from Playtonic to even just them sneaking in Royston in Connect Sports Season 2, because we said we would cover Connect Sports Season 2 if they sneaked Royston in. It is something that does exist beyond my own fevered dreams. But in this new era, there is the open possibility. It was Mitchell Wolfe who first questioned whether or not Banjo would appear in this Battletoads. And it's like, it's a possibility. I really doubt it, though, Mitchell. Well, a character has appeared in Battletoads, and like I said, spoilers from here on out. So if you don't want any Battletoads spoilers, please do not listen to this. This is not so cut and dry in a way that just Banjo or Royston appearing in the game would be. It is a little bit more convoluted. The historical analogy that I think fits best is Mr. Pants. So, Dustin, I can rattle all of this off, no problem, in my sleep. I think on my deathbed, my body will actually cease all functions, but my lips will still be talking about Mr. Pants and Banjo-Tooie. Do you want to explain to people, because I want to hear it from an outsider's perspective, do you want to explain to the audience how Banjo-Tooie made the game It's Mr. Pants part of the Donkey Kong universe?
Hyle, I would love nothing more than to do that. So, in Banjo-Tooie, in the home of one Boggy Bear and his family, he has a TV in his house, as some people do. Not a lot of people in Banjo do, but this guy, Boggy, has a TV, and you'll never guess what show he decides to watch. He decides to watch a Mr. Pants television show. In this world of Banjo-Kazooie, Mr. Pants is a beloved celebrity, loved by all, and he has his own TV show. And Boggy watches it. This man of refined taste watches Mr. Pants on TV. And because of that, I believe the rule is that it's counted as a physical appearance, even if it's just on a TV. It still shows that he has a physical presence in the world of Banjo-Kazooie.
Yes, and we got into it with Chris Alcock on our Sea of Thieves stream the other week, because he gate crashes them frequently. And because his baby at Rare is Cameo Elements of Power, which we have not classified as DKU, much to his chagrin. So he was looking for loopholes to retroactively classify it as part of the DKU, because there's the whole question about if the pummelweed with the Mumbo Jumbo pummelweed skin, can that actually be counted as a real appearance of Mumbo Jumbo? Ultimately, it could not. There is some renewed debate about it, and it was shot down by Chris Alcock, of all people. But he was talking about, well, the ostriches, the little ostrich birds in the game, they were taken from Saberman Stampede, which was, of course, going to be Donkey Kong Racing. So could this count as an appearance from Expresso? It's like, no, it can't, because... Anyway, so he questioned why Mr. Pants makes his first quote-unquote physical appearance in Banjo-Tooie and then becomes a DKU native-born character. Because, of course, Mr. Pants was referenced earlier in Jet Force Gemini, the code that makes all of the ants take on the appearance of Mr. Pants, but that's like the Mumbo Pummelweeds thing, where it's just a skin. It's not representing an actual physical appearance of Mr. Pants, right? I'm sure if anybody from Delilah Studios is tuning in to want to hear what hardcore Rare fans think of the new Battletoads, I do apologize that we are now talking about Mr. Pants and ants and Boggy Bear and his, quite frankly, disgusting habits in that living room. We'll get to Battletoads, but this is important for our audience. Trust me. So, anyway, he's like, how do you know that's not just an animated drawing of Mr. Pants that Boggy is watching? How do you know it's a real physical presence of Mr. Pants? Well, Mr. Alcock, we said, if you watch the end credits, you'll notice that for the entire staff, they're all assigned a character from the game. So, you've got like their name, and then for their middle name in quotation marks, it gives that Banjo-Tooie character, and then it's their last name. It's similar, kind of like what The Simpsons do in their Treehouse of Horror episodes, although a little bit more rudimentary and blunt. So anyway, all of the characters in the Banjo-Tooie credits are actual characters in Banjo-Tooie. And then for Lee Loveday's credit, I believe, it was Lee Mr. Pants Loveday. And so, Therefore, that is the in-game validation we need to say that is an actual appearance of Mr. Pants. The first appearance of Mr. Pants in an actual video game. Therefore, Banjo-Tooie is Mr. Pants' first appearance, and when It's Mr. Pants was released on the Game Boy Advance, 12 copies eventually broke out. I think most of them in the UK. I think 3 of them were found along the Canadian border, which is where I got mine smuggled to me. But that's why It's Mr. Pants is considered a Banjo-Kazooie spin-off. So that's very important for why Battletoads, and I'm making a declaration here, even though I've already made the declaration in the news post I made about it. The new Battletoads game is part of the Donkey Kong universe. And it's kind of a Mr. Pants situation, although it is the modern version of Mr. Pants in Captain Bones. Now, Captain Bones, for those of you who don't know, is sort of another character who began life online as part of Rare's marketing efforts for Sea of Thieves. So Mr. Pants originally started life as a character that Lee Loveday created when he ran the Rare website exclusively. And it was just a piss-take character, a pale British man in his underpants wearing a bowler hat with a mustache. It was just a purposely shit character, right? But it took on a life of its own, and eventually Rare was like, we've got to do something with Donkey Kong coconut crackers. Fuck it, let's just make it a Mr. Pants game. So...
And it was a massive hit and flew off the shelves.
It's a massive hit in my heart, Dustin. It is one of my favorite Game Boy Advance games, one of my favorite handheld games of all time, and my absolute favorite puzzle game. And when I'm not annoying Paul Makachek on Twitter about Donkey Kong Land, I'm annoying him about It's Mr. Pants, because I can't get enough of talking about it. And I think everyone should play it once in their life, or else their life will be incomplete, and they must reincarnate and play it again, or attempt to play it again before they can move on into the new realm of the afterlife. But Captain Bones debuted, I guess, as a notion at E3 2015 alongside Rare Replay and the first trailer of Sea of Thieves. So when you walk into Rare's whole E3 show floor presence, they had all of these rows and rows of TVs where you could play Rare Replay. And it was the most weirdly casual thing, because there's Robin Beanland showing off Rare Replay. Just go up, talk to Robin Beanland, and play Rare Replay. Like, what the hell? Like, it's like Nintendo, of course, has to keep, all of their big time celebrities at E3 under lock and key, because they would get mobbed. We heard stories about how Miyamoto got mobbed by people, and people were trying to touch him as if he were a healer. Like, touch me, Mr. Miyamoto. And they just had to get him the hell out of there. But not as many people know Robin Beanland. They know his work, but they don't know who he is. And so there he is. He's just showing off Rare Replay. But in that stage show, the stage floor, they also had this skeleton just laying there with a sign at Ask Captain Bones. And he's a skeleton just dressed up as a pirate. Just like the kind of skeleton you would see in a science class, right? Just the shittiest thing. just a skeleton with a wig and some Halloween pirate clothes. It was like, it's Captain Bones. He's our mascot for Sea of Thieves.
That's all it takes to make a star.
He's got a Twitter account. The Twitter account was run by Greg Mails for the most part. Greg Mails, who is this very shy, very unassuming man in person, but then he's got a wicked sense of humor when he gets behind a screen. And Captain Bones was like just this great thing, this great way to get, I think, some classic Rare fans excited about Sea of Thieves. It was a way of saying like, hey, that sense of humor you loved about like the Rare of the 90s, it's kind of back for this. We're re-embracing our past, and we're like preserving that sense of cheekiness into the future. And so Captain Bones was kind of a big thing for a while, but then just sort of fell off after a bit once the actual hype for Sea of Thieves began. And, we got trailers and we got the technical alpha. Captain Bones kind of became a relic, but inside Sea of Thieves, the video game, there are references to the character Captain Bones. You can buy items, the earliest of which I believe was a tankard. Like, this tankard was owned by Captain Bones and his father, and it's just the shittiest looking tankard, just like Captain Bones is the shittiest concept of a character, but delightful in how shitty it is, right? And then later on, I think for the first anniversary, you got a cutlass that was owned by Captain Bones. I've heard some people say there is a skelly captain in the game called Captain Adam Bones, because what Rare does is all the skelly captains that have bounties put on them in the game from the Order of Souls, they're all named by people who have worked on Sea of Thieves or have some like relation to Rare, or who had worked there at one time. So like you see all of these names who you'll recognize, and Captain Adam Bones is one of those. So I don't think the intention, they're all pun names, so I don't think the intention is that Captain Adam Bones is the Captain Bones of the fame of the Twitter account and the one that's referenced in the item descriptions. Visually, looks different anyway. However, Dustin, in the Sea of Thieves in-game credits, which you can watch at any time from the main menu, there is 2 pictures of the actual Captain Bones, the actual skeleton that they used as the character Captain Bones. And therefore, once again, because of the credits, this is kind of a reverse Mr. Pants, right? Because the credits show this skeletal figure, Captain Bones, and in-game we have, like in the adventure, we have references to this character. That validates those pictures as the Captain Bones, and therefore that counts as a physical appearance of the character.
Wow. I mean, I was going into this thinking, okay, what's Hyle gonna pull out of his hat for this? But that seems pretty, so I was talking about it with another friend. I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. What am I gonna say? The pressure's on, but that seems pretty open and shut.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people are pulling out their hair right now because they're like, no, that should not count. Here's the thing though. In the lore of Sea of Thieves, Captain Bones is a real pirate, right? Mm-hmm. Just like Captain Black Eye is a real pirate. Now, Captain Black Eye is represented in-game because that is Greg Mail's actual character avatar. He is sailing the game as Captain Black Eye. So that's why Sea of Thieves is considered a Banjo spinoff. Much like Banjo was a Diddy Kong Racing spinoff. So spinning out of Banjo-Tooie, just like it's Mr. Pants, is Sea of Thieves. Although Sea of Thieves is also like this omni-prequel, and in some cases sequel, so many Rare franchises. So it's not just, like, for our purposes, we consider it a Banjo-Tooie spinoff, but it's also a Pendragon sequel. So it's not, it doesn't just belong to us. But anyway, Captain Bones is a real figure in the lore of Sea of Thieves, and because we have pictures of him in the credits, I'd say that counts just barely as a physical appearance, especially because I believe at least one of the pictures of him is at Rare. at the studios in Twycross. So when Captain Bones appears in Battletoads, he's doing so under the employ of Rare. So, okay, let's talk about the plot of Battletoads and where Captain Bones comes into it. It's just a brief cameo, but it elicits a lot of laughs. And it's not like a background cameo. It's just like, oh, there he is. He's here. But I think we need to explain the premise of the plot, where the game starts out, and why this makes sense as the real Captain Bones. And then we'll talk about Battletoads.
Maybe we'll get around to actually talking about the game.
Yeah. So the plot... Well, okay, so let's say this right here. Battletoads is DKU, okay? I'm going rogue and making the declaration upon myself. I'm gaveling the gavel, hammering the hammer on my chest right now. It's DKU. We don't even need a tribunal for it.
Yeah, see, I was prepared to come in and have like a big debate on it, but that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, it does. You don't do any work, right? You're welcome.
Perfect. I'll just put my feet up.
Battletoads is developed by Dlala Studios, a small UK studio. Its lead designer and director being AJ Grand Scrutton. And Rare is co-developers of the game and publisher of the game, with creative oversight from them led by Paul Collins, who I got to speak with quite a bit at E3 2019. Sorry, I was like, it was the last E3. No, it was 2 E3s ago. Oh, wait, there wasn't an E3 this year. Right. All right. So, but Paul Collins was great to talk to. We're going to be discussing, as I said, Act 1, and that contains major spoilers. So, and actually, Dlala was doing everything they could to keep this under wraps, apparently. They did not want the big twist to get out ahead of time. And so a lot of people were starting to notice that the big trailer for the game, when they announced its launch date, they're like, something seems off, because it sounds like the Battletoads aren't established heroes yet. And I remember Jeff Oden in particular, questioned if it was a prequel, because it seemed like they were just starting out. Well, it's not a prequel. It is very much a sequel to everything that has come before. But with this big twist to explain why there hasn't been a Battletoads game in 26 years. And I've seen this likened a lot to Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts and what they did with Banjo-Kazooie in that game. And so essentially, the Battletoads, as the game starts out, they're like big time heroes, right? They're going around, they're going to this award ceremony in their honor. They're beating up rats like they're wont to do. And everything feels like it's just picking up as if they've had 26 years of games that we haven't seen, all these adventures. They're bigger than ever. And this whole sequence where they fight Porkshank, who, the Bebop style boss, it really harkens back to a lot of those early games and that whole general tone of 1991. But that ends with them reaching the reward ceremony, then discovering they can fly, and then just chanting, "We are gods, we are gods, we are gods," and then it ends. And the revelation is that they've actually been stuck in what's tantamount to a holodeck for the last 26 years, not realizing it, and that their entire lives for the past 2.5 decades have been a lie, and that the greater galactic community has forgotten about them. So they are essentially just relics, like I thought they were back in 1994, and they no longer have any of their fame to trade on. So they're then stuck doing menial day jobs to make ends meet, far astray from their former professions as video game heroes. And before we get into the sequence itself, what did you think about this plot twist?
I thought it was great. I thought it was a great way to, you said people are likening it to Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. I hate to speak ill of Nuts and Bolts, but I definitely think this game does that sort of plot better. Because what I don't like about how Nuts and Bolts handles it is it really kind of beats you over the head with the fact that this is all a video game. You guys haven't had a video game in a long time. With Battletoads, that's our universe's context, but in the universe of Battletoads, it works perfectly well in universe. They were trapped in they're trapped in a simulation this whole time. That's better than just, hey, you guys haven't had a game in 26 years, you losers.
Yeah, Nuts and Bolts, and I will defend Nuts and Bolts, and I do love a lot about Nuts and Bolts, including the plot. But there was this sense of fatalism that was just abundant in Nuts and Bolts, and the humor, and just the nobody wants a 3D platformer anymore. We're washed up. Nothing Rare has sold that well for Xbox. They're probably going to shut us down soon. Like, there is just this, it was just sad in a lot of ways. Like, there were like things like Ghoulies, game disc piled up in the dumpster, and just a lot of self-deprecating humor, but even more so than we were ever accustomed to from Rare. It really did feel like, oh, this is it for us, right? This is it for Rare. This is it for Banjo. This is it for everything. Nobody likes our games anymore. Nobody likes Banjo anymore. And then that like translated into Banjo-Kazooie themselves are out of shape. They're just sitting around. And I do like elements of that, but it did feel like it was just bleak, especially if you're a fan of those games, or you're a fan of the genre, or you're a fan of Rare. It just felt like it sort of reminded me a little bit of like late Arrested Development season 3, where like they were canceled and they like did a whole episode about them being canceled, and it was called Save Our Bluths, which one of my favorite episodes of the show, but it really did feel like the entirety of Nuts and Bolts, or at least the plot of Nuts and Bolts really did delve into that. Like, this is it. We're done. There's no way back from this. And you don't get that with Battletoads. You get a lot of, it's a little bit more optimistic and matter of fact. Like, yeah, there hasn't been a new game in 26 years, and we're going to create an in-universe reason why that's been the case, and then we're going to use that as a springboard for the plot. Whereas in Nuts and Bolts, it just felt like more just, we brought this upon ourselves. Yeah. And isn't it sad?
The comparison I was thinking about is, with Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, it was more pessimistic. They brought back Banjo-Kazooie, but it kind of felt like, well, Banjo-Kazooie has to be something else now. People don't want what Banjo-Kazooie is now. With Battletoads, it's the opposite. It's like, no, fuck that. Here is why you should still love the Battletoads.
Yeah, and in some ways, it also serves to keep the characters. Oh, it's a little bit like putting them in cryogenic sleep for 26 years, like they did with Saberman when they brought him back as a somewhat reoccurring Rare character in Banjo-Tooie. But it's a way of keeping them very much a product of like the early 90s. Like, they went under in 1994 and lived this simulated world that was tailored to their mind, to their personalities, to what they perceive the world to be. And so it creates an in-universe excuse why they haven't evolved as characters, because they've been living in a world that's been catered to being a radical dude of 1994. And so they completely missed, you know, the entirety of the aughts and the tens. And I love that. I do genuinely love that. And I thought it was really clever, although the alarm bells in my brain were going off because Rash in particular has appeared in many, many games since 2014. He's been the go-to character for cameos. He was in Shovel Knight. I think all the Battletoads were in Shovel Knight, actually. Yeah. But Rash was also in Killer Instinct, the new Killer Instinct. He was in hashtag IDARB, IDARB, which is important for DK Vine because that is a DKU game, as Rash is on the rare team with Banjo, with Conker, with Saberman, with Fudgehog. So it's like, well, what about all these appearances that Rash has made? How does that work with the revelation that they've been in a simulation? Are you saying that IDAR was just a simulation and then that wasn't Banjo and Conker or in Kazooie? Because then that couldn't be DKU if they were just simulations. That is an animated Mr. Pants dancing on a TV, not the real thing. So, brief existential crisis here, because I was like, I enjoy the twist, but it's also disregarding all of the cameos, and that's very unrare to disregard any elements of continuity. So then we launch into what's so far because I haven't beaten the game yet, but this is so far my favorite sequence in the game, and it's not exquisitely crafted gameplay. It's basically nothing, but it's hilarious, and I love that they make you go through the motions of doing. It's supposed to be tedious. It's supposed to be boring, and I find it delightful that they make you sit through this. And that is the three Battletoads working their new day jobs. And it's just this comical montage where all the action stops. And here is Pimple, and he's working in a day spa as a masseuse, and you have to massage this pink gooey alien. You have to like use your fingers to really knead it in, and then you have to use your knuckles to really give it a deep therapeutic massage. And as someone, Dustin, who is an enthusiast of getting his tired, sore muscles massaged, and I love breathing in the scents of lavender, and I love spa music. I love those harps and the distant sound of water and one of those little like indoor waterfalls. I was like, yes, I just want the whole game to be this, because I've always... I'm somebody who carries a lot of stress in his shoulders, right? And so I often think, what would it be like if Donkey Kong gave me a back rub? This is nothing weird. This is nothing sexual, Dustin.
No, of course not.
This is just a person who is a spa enthusiast, who is also a Donkey Kong fanatic, whose career is Donkey Kong journalist. And so naturally, I'm going to be thinking, who has strong arms that can make my shoulders feel better? Why, it's Donkey Kong.
It would be weird if you didn't think that, honestly.
I watch YouTube videos of people getting massages, not porn videos of people getting massages. No, I just, to relax, watch YouTube videos of people at the spa, and I find it to be the most serene thing. So I've always wanted, like, a game, and I've never spoken this out loud before because it's humiliating, but I want a game called Donkey Kong Spa where Donkey Kong gives people massages. Okay, that's not weird, all right? That's just what I want. But I sort of got it here. Because the Battletoad who turns into the simian in one of his morph attacks, why he's given a character a massage, and I get to knead it with a controller, and I found that fantastic.
Wow, who would have guessed that's what you would get from this game?
I know, thank you, Delilah.
You know what the fans were asking for.
Then that sequence ends, and it kind of it's a triple split screen, or it becomes a triple split screen. So Pimple is pushed to the side, and then the focus is on Zitz and his new job, and Zitz is working in an office. just run-of-the-mill office, nondescript, fluorescent lighting, and he's at the computer.
I think he says he's lead attacher at the email factory.
Right, yeah. So you'll have to type on the computer and you click. You don't actually use a keyboard. You use your controller to just push buttons, and then you have to send the email or you have to attach the thing to the email and then send it. And then every so often the camera pans over and you have to listen to the idle chatter of his coworkers at the water cooler. And it's just the most inane, it's just, I think it was I thought I had the promotion lined up until we had the meeting about the email. And then the camera goes back to Zitz and you've got to type some more. And it's so it's like the humor of this game, which we'll get into, it's not overtly dry. A lot of it is over the top. Some of it is crass. For more on that, see the episode artwork if you're listening on YouTube or SoundCloud. But there is this kind of it's all over the place, and there is this kind of quiet intellect behind some of the jokes that I really appreciate. The whole thing, it's dumb humor, mostly presented in a smart way. Unless a character is just wearing a diaper and shitting in it, which I respect too. Because when Chad and I had our comic strip, our brief failed attempt at doing a comic strip, one of my reoccurring strip ideas was where a character frequently has bouts of diarrhea, and then in the inaugural edition of the strip about diarrhea, he stole a diaper from a baby and took a poo-poo in it. And I thought it was brilliant. And I was the only one. But, so I have no room to talk about Rash wearing a diaper. But, speaking of Rash, we then see what his job is. And he is at some sort of convention, stamping autographs, not signing autographs. He has a stamp like a shitty celebrity, and he is signing his autographs for something like 300, whatever the monetary denomination is in the Battletoads neck of space. But he's signing them for $300 a pop, or 300 units a pop. And it's interesting because the new Rare logo, the one they've had since 2015, is in the background, like up behind him while he's sitting at this convention table. And you hear the Sea of Thieves music, the piece that's called Maiden Voyage that starts up when you start up the game. And so I was like, oh, they're blaring Maiden Voyage on the speaker. That's interesting. And then once Rash's little segment is done, that's when the camera, it becomes a full screen on Rash's situation, and you see he's sharing the convention table with Captain Bones, and there's a big sign and arrow pointing down that says Captain Bones, in case there was any doubt who this was. And Captain Bones is also signing autographs at the Rare table at this convention. And so that's why it's DKU. And that's how Captain Bones appears in the new Battletoads. And it also, in my mind, somewhat explains all of those appearances Rash has made, all of those cameos he has made in the last 5+ years. And that's because what Rash has done is, now we know Rare exists as a video game developer, even in the world of their video games. Viva Pinata established that Horace St. James Golightly is the explorer that Rare sends to the Rare archipelago to study the wildlife there and get ideas for games, and then it brings back, documents events that actually happen, and then brings them back and then develops games. And that's how things like Killer Instinct both exist as a video game in the Donkey Kong universe, but also how characters like, Fulgore and Spinal can appear in IDARB alongside Banjo-Kazooie and Conker. So Rare exists within the Donkey Kong universe, and if we really want to get into the weeds of this, they were probably funded by the money that was stolen and pillaged from a band of pirates that used the Rare logo, which Rare staffers have this sale in Sea of Thieves with the Rare logo. So Rare has been started life as a pirate organization and eventually became a video game studio in Twycross.
Obviously.
Anyway, so Rash working with Rare and Rare having an intergalactic presence, it's not completely unheard of, right? Rare is this powerful organization, much more powerful than they are in real life within the context of the DKU. So yeah, they may reach out to another solar system. Sure, why not? After all, they made Star Fox Adventures. How did they know about that happening? They've got spies in the stars, and they sent Captain Bones to wherever Battletoads takes place in space for this intergalactic convention, which means Captain Bones, the Skelly, is still alive in 2020, and he's holed up in Twycross working directly for Rare, which explains the pictures of him we saw in the Sea of Thieves credits, why he was in Twycross at Manor Park. There you go, Dustin.
It makes perfect sense.
Fucking circle. So thank you, Delilah, for putting Captain Bones in Battletoads. I bet you had no idea how much it would please this one random weirdo who runs a website. Thank you. But no, the whole sequence was great. And I love that you actually had to control them. I love that this wasn't just a cinematic of them going about their day jobs. This was actually a whole chapter in the game. Anyway, so I should say that probably means hashtag IDARB takes place in roughly around the time of this montage within Battletoads, so that kind of realigns where IDARB takes place in the timeline. So, yeah. But, yeah, then they're broke. They're barely making ends meet. They live in a shitty apartment that actually, it's not just by the train tracks. It actually has a train track running through the apartment. And Rash is just, he's not content to live this lifestyle. He wants to be essentially a big shot hero again. And so he concocts this plan to rent turbo bikes, hunt down the Dark Queen, and get their name in the news again. So that's kind of where the plot springboards from there. So Dustin, what do you think about the humor of the game? Because like everything about this game, I have seen a mixed response, both on our forums and on social media. What do you think? The humor was written by Tom Kaufman, or at least the game is credited as being written by Tom Kaufman. And it's much more of a comedy than I remember past Battletoads games being. And I've especially seen comparisons to like Adult Swim in-house stuff like Aqua Teen Hunger Force. And it's not far off, although I would say that it's more eclectic than the Adult Swim style. Which is broadly referred to, as like stoner humor. And I wouldn't say this is really stoner humor. Some of the jokes are broad and overly dumb, and some are more on the like Ghostbusters scale of a little bit dry and observational. And I think if the animation were presented in a more like realistically proportioned style, it would probably be more in line, be more compared to something like Thor Ragnarok in its humor and tone. But what do you think?
Most of it I really like. It's kind of a mixed bag, but I'd say it's mostly hit. Not in a game like this that, focuses on, there's a big focus on humor, on funny laughs and jokes and yuck-em-ups. Not everyone's gonna land. But personally, I think most of them do. And, if a joke doesn't land, then there's gonna be another joke pretty quick to move us along anyway.
Well, that's the thing. Like, even if I don't find something particularly amusing, it comes at such a rapid-fire pace, aside from the bits that are mostly just dedicated to the classic beat-em-up style. But even then, you're going to have, like, pop-ups of characters saying things. Yeah, you're going to have another joke coming at you pretty fast. It's similar, I think, to... at least in a breakneck style, to something like Mystery Science Theater 3000, where like maybe 20% of the jokes don't really land, but then you've got the other 80% and you've got a joke coming at you every 10 seconds. So it doesn't really matter if you didn't find something funny. And I also think it depends when you're playing the game, because I played it a little bit late last night around like 12:30, and I was like cracking up in my sleep-deprived state. So I think if you're coming at this like in the middle of the day, like straight from the office, or like, like if you're feeling more buttoned up, this game is kind of, you're gonna be like, what? Shut up. But if you're coming at it from a looser, goofier perspective, it definitely is funny. I personally was like cracking up at some of the stuff, and I even tweeted how funny it was. And I stand by that. Like, I think I think it's jarring for some people how much of an overt comedy it is. Because I think when people were thinking of a Battletoads revival, a new Battletoads, they were thinking something a lot more in line with the NES games, where it would sort of be humorous in presentation, but it wouldn't be written as like a straight up farce at times. And I really enjoy the way they went about this, and I think it was ultimately correct, because this is the first time where I really find myself invested in the world of Battletoads. Whereas before, I just saw it as, like, and maybe that's way too dismissive of the past games, but this is the first time I really feel like I care about learning about the world that I'm playing in, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And a large part of that is the humor and the personalities of the three Toads, which really are the heart of this whole thing. And, I don't know, I think the Battletoads themselves are overtly idiotic, but in a very endearing way that it's a fine line to walk, believe me. And I speak, again, as someone who has written overtly idiotic characters most of his life. I even, had a TV series where a character forgets to breathe. He's so dumb, he forgets how to breathe. Oh. And that was the joke.
Relatable humor.
I wrote, I think this was a gag in both the comic strip and the TV show, but a joke where a character is pumping gas into his car, and then he quizzically looks at the gas pump, and he puts the gas pump in his mouth, and he puts the gas in his mouth, and then it cuts to an ambulance. Actually, no, that was a scene I did write for the TV show, but we ultimately cut it because we couldn't find a clean enough gas pump for the actor to actually stick it in his mouth. Relatable problems, people. So anyway, I enjoy, like, I can't remember if this is the beginning of Act 2 or the end of Act 1, so I don't know if I want to spoil it, but there's this one part where I'll just say it, like, I think Rash wants Pimple to punch his fist through his brains, and he's just like, put me out of my misery, and Pimple starts crying, and he's like, I don't want to do it, man, but I love you so much that if this is what you want, I'll do it. And meanwhile, like, the Dark Queen is just there staring at them, like, what? And it's just broadly stupid characters, but they're so stupid that it comes back around to being weirdly brilliant in its own way. I appreciated the way they were presented. I like that they have this long history, that they're a little weird, probably because of the 26 years in isolation. And they have this, like, fellowship between them that feels very much earned.
Yeah. I think what helps is they are very stupid, but they still feel like characters. They all have their own personalities, for once.
Yes.
It helps them feel like they're not just vehicles for gags. It's not like Family Guy, where characters only exist just to make these little silly jokes.
And that's the big thing, because anybody who knows me knows how much I dislike Family Guy.
Oh, and boy, do I know.
Yeah, boy, do you know. And so when you have something like this animated product that is really just this dispensary for joke after joke after joke, you really do run the risk of losing the sense of the characters, and then not caring for the characters, or even worse, outwardly hating the characters, like I do for the entirety of the Family Guy cast. So, you know, that is a very, like, thin rope you have to walk across, or you're going to fall into that chasm of apathy or just disgust. But I find the three Battletoads endearing. I find the Dark Queen endearing, and we'll get into her design, but I don't want to get too much into her role, because that doesn't really come about until Act 2 and beyond. But I think that all the characters are well written, and they feel like real people with real quirks and real desires and real goals. And that is... So long as you have that, I think you can hang whatever jokes you want on them, and they can be dumber than the dumbest person you've ever met, and you'll still root for them.
Yeah.
And, so, like, these are the dumbest characters in the DKU. I'll just outright say it. Like, we've never had protagonists in the DKU that have been this outrageously moronic. And it's refreshing in a way. Donkey all confused, haha. Banjo's a little slow at times. But these are, I think, three characters who have been together for so long and haven't had any real exposure outside of this brotherhood or faux brotherhood that they have, that to outsiders they're going to seem idiotic, but to each other it's perfectly normal, because this is just who they are.
Yeah, it's funny that you mention Adult Swim earlier, because the main writer, Tom Kaufman, he was actually a writer on Rick and Morty.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, he's worked on lots of episodes throughout the first two seasons, and the person who voices Zitz is Ryan Ridley, who's another Rick and Morty alum. So they have that Adult Swim DNA kind of baked into the game.
Yeah, but it never feels like it's inauthentic to the Rare style of humor either. And there's a lot of... They don't break the fourth wall quite as much as something like Nuts and Bolts did, of course. But there's still, like, observational humor I mentioned, where they kind of take the piss out of the beat-em-up genre, and, like, how you'll walk for a bit and then you're suddenly surrounded by enemies. And there's just, like, lines poking fun at that, like, how is this always the way it happens to us? And it's especially when the Dark Queen comes about, because she has a English accent, so that's where it really feels more British in humor when she enters. But It feels like a Rare game. It feels like the Rare style of humor, but it definitely does feel more contemporary in some ways and more in line with what you would expect from Adult Swim. But I don't know. I think it's dismissive to just say it's basically Adult Swim humor, or it's not. It's a kind of a mesh between the two.
Yeah, and one thing that really stuck out to me was I wonder if someone at the ESRB was asleep that day, because this game really has a lot of jokes that kind of made me go, wow, they let that slide, huh? Like,
what? I just realized I don't even know what the ESRB rating is for the game.
It's E10 plus.
No, how?
I know, right?
How? Because I assumed it was teen.
Yeah, it
I
feels
assumed it
like
had
a
to be teen. There's no way that this should share the same rating as Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, which was the originator of the E10 plus rating. But yeah, okay. I don't know how they got away with that.
Yeah, they let a lot of stuff slide that day.
Yeah, clearly. I'm just thinking. I mean, for Christ's sake, can we just talk about the diaper scene?
If you really want to.
In the apartment, Rash is when he's concocting this plan that they're going to go after the Dark Queen, and he's got the usual crazy person signifiers of a corkboard with string attached to various nonsensical things. He's wearing a diaper filled with fecal matter. The implication being that he's been so dedicated to this that he's become such a crazy person around. We have to find the Dark Queen to reestablish ourselves, that he has decided he has no time to properly use the facilities, that he is going to relieve himself wearing the garments that is usually reserved for a baby or an incontinent elder.
Yeah, I mean...
And people hate this. So much so that I was like, I have to make it the episode artwork. There's no way around it. I was like, whoa, Rash is shitting himself, and there's the poo-poo.
There it is.
So, I look, here's what I'll say about the humor, all right? Did I think that was a bit too far? Probably. Do I have room to talk? The man who wrote Phil Weinberg's Diarrhea? Absolutely not. Does it ultimately matter? No, because like we said, even if the humor doesn't land 100% of the time, I still found 80% of it funny. And I can just let the diaper thing go as, yeah, that's probably poor taste and very juvenile, but you know what? Whatever. Like, I'm not going to hold it against the game. I find it something that I'm already embracing as a fan of the game. As like, oh yeah, Rash shit himself and he's wearing the diaper and it's sagging because it's full of feces.
Yeah, the animation on it is pretty... You see it sway...
Yeah. I think on the DK Vine forum, we need a neon avatar of just the diaper. The diaper full of poo-poo. I think honestly, that would be a good thing to like win in a contest for the DK Vine forum.
A diaper full of poo-poo?
Get that neon avatar for the forum. The diaper full of poo-poo. Now, I think the game, by and large, it has a brilliant tone. It is far different than anything I imagined for Battletoads. Like, I liken it more to Thor Ragnarok, which was inarguably the best Thor movie so far, and also like one of my favorite MCU movies. And I like that it just embraced the full-on comedic aspect. Like, yeah, we're gonna make it a comedy. Yeah, it's going to be flagrantly dumb at times, because it really does, I think, make me appreciate the world a little bit more. It makes me understand the world a little bit more than what Battletoads was. So Yeah. I guess I just have less class than some people who dislike it. So that being said, I did want to discuss the animation, and this is one of the major reasons you're on the episode with me, Dustin, is the animated style, the art direction, the way the characters look, and I want to get your take on it, because personally, by and large, I love the way this game looks. I adore it. I loved it when it was first shown off at E3 2019. The only thing I think I'll agree with some of the detractors on is that I don't really care for the Dark Queen redesign. I understand the Dark Queen redesign, absolutely. I think it's just way too bland compared to where she was, and but that's a small nitpick. Ultimately, I think the game looks great, and I love and I've said this before, what I love about Battletoads, the new one, Battletoads 2020, I'm just going to call it Battletoads, because the DKU Battletoads, whatever. I hate when games do this. Punch-Out did the same thing when they did the Wii Punch-Outs that had Donkey Kong in it in 2009. And it was just called Punch-Out, and so it's like Punch-Out, parentheses, Wii, and now this is Battletoads, parentheses, Xbox One / Windows 10 / Steam? I don't know. Battletoads 2020. But what I loved about the art direction is that they didn't just create a game that looks like the original Battletoads games did. They made something a little bit more contemporary, but then they infused into that contemporary animation style the aesthetics and attitude of 1991, from the color scheme to just I don't know, like the way some of the characters are presented and animated. It feels very much like that era, even if it's not necessarily representative of what games in that era would look like, if that makes any sense. The attitude is of the early 1990s. And it even kind of has that dreamy vaporwave aesthetic, like heavy on the pinks and purples and vaguely neon. I think it's great, but I really wanted to hear what you think. And don't allow my opinion to sway your opinion, like a dirty diaper.
Well, I would kind of liken it back to the humor, you know, like if 20% of it doesn't land, there's a good 80% that does. So for the most part, I really like how it looks. I do agree that the Dark Queen's design could have been a little more interesting. You know, you don't have to go all out sex appeal like the originals, but I still think you could have done something that, you know.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I am 100% sex positive, and I'm fine with, you know, some cheesecake in there. Yeah. But I do think, I did think it's interesting they added the gray streak in her hair.
Oh, I love that.
To signify that she is also aged 26 years. And I think it suits her character. Like, even if she was still in the full-on Dark Queen look, I think having that gray streak would have, like, suited her perfectly. But I think just wearing, like, the purple, like, lab outfit, the mad scientist outfit, whatever, it is like just so bland compared to where we were, and I think they could have found a better middle ground. But like you said about like things not hitting all the time, you can dislike one aspect of the game and not hold that against the entire game.
Yeah, exactly.
And
not every design is going to be amazing, but I think like all the toads look great. A lot of NPCs and enemies look good. It's weird that they went for a more abstract alien design to most of the characters, since all the past Battletoads games have just had, you know, they've had your anthropomorphic rats and pigs and stuff. And you do get that in like the first stage of the game. But after that, it's
where they still think it's 1994, or they think it's a 2020 that's representative of 1994.
Yeah.
And then, yeah. Yeah, like, we're talking about Act 1 here, so you've got all those like carnival fairground baddies with like the popcorn machine baddies, that they're like anthropomorphic popcorn machine creatures that can like electrocute you, and then you got the ice cream men who shoot ice cream scoops.
I hate both of them. Not in terms of design. The designs are wonderful. They are so frustrating. Those are the two enemies. I'm just like, go away, please. Just let me.
We'll talk about the gameplay and the difficulty, because I watched a little bit of the stream you did as part of the Idaho crew on our Twitch channel this past Thursday, but I missed what difficulty you were playing on, so I'm curious to find that out. Oh. But yeah, I hated them at first too, until I got better at the game. You're kind of really thrown in, and like it will give you like pointers like, hey, do this to do that move, and then those pointers disappear and you're like, wait, what buttons do I press? What was that? I don't know. And then you're kind of button mashing in sheer panic. Yeah, I thought the abstract alien designs, and this really was not just for the baddies, this was for like NPCs too, background characters. We keep bringing it back to Adult Swim, and there are like in-house projects, but it also reminds me of Futurama.
Yeah. So
much of the art direction of the characters and the world that they inhabit reminds me of the look of Futurama, which I loved Futurama in its initial run, the antithesis to Family Guy for me, because I cared about the characters. I cared. There was actual world building. There was growth and depth until the revival, where then they just forgot about Fry and Leela being a couple when it was convenient, and it just felt like they kind of lost the thread a little bit. But there were still some good episodes of the revival. I'm not gonna cast the whole thing out with the baby in the bathwater, but I like the way the world looks, and like I said, it makes the world of Battletoads, their sector of space, something interesting, and that even extends to the language, the alien language in the background, which is actually the real words written in this alien language that you can learn. So for all of you at home who enjoy DKU made up languages like Saurian, and that was Saurian, and maybe studied the Kremlin hieroglyphics in Crocodile Core in Donkey Kong Country 2. If you're into that kind of shit, boy, you're in luck here, because we have a whole new language to learn. Have you learned the language yet?
Boy, I sure haven't.
Yeah, I tuned into the stream and I saw like Jeff and Mitchell have already mastered it. I'm like, what? Okay, where do you guys find the time to do this? The game just came out this morning and you've already like mastered its version of Klingon. and two, that's not an appropriate analogy. It's more like the Star Wars alien language that you see in the background of the Star Wars films, and that they have like all over Galaxy's Edge. I forget what it's called, but there's the Star Wars written language. It's just a basic cipher replacing an English alphabet letter with this made up symbol, and you just switch them out, and then there's your word. But yeah, I'm like, where do you guys find the time to do this? I don't understand, Jeff and Mitchell. And I envy them, and then I feel bad about myself, and then I feel like I need to go off into the woods again for several days alone and cry.
Yeah, I haven't even mastered the game itself yet, and people out here.
I know, right? Like, Jeff, I'm sure, has already beaten it 7 times on hardest difficulty, and here I am struggling with tadpole mode. Yeah, I really like the art design. I especially the toads themselves. I think, I'm just going to say, I don't think the Battletoads have ever looked better. I think, especially, like, they're the ones who feel, like, the most concrete as far as character designs, like, of like, having something resembling humanoid proportions, but they're a little bit more abstract than they've appeared than like all of Rash's cameo appearances in the last several years. He's definitely more cartoony here, but that lends itself pretty well to all of their morphine attacks. And there's so much in this game, so many like forms they can take in battle. And it's astounding to me where I'm playing and then I like pull off something and I'm like, wait, that's a move? How did I do that? And I think the art direction really lends itself to that.
I agree. I really like how the Toads each have different things that let you know which Toad is which. You know, Rash has always had the sunglasses, but Zitz before always kind of just felt like the one that doesn't have the sunglasses.
Right. Zitz is like the one who's not as cool as Rash and not as big as Pimple. He's just been there. And now I kind of really get a sense of all of them. As not just characters, because that also stems from the writing, but in just design as well. I just really like the way they look here.
Yeah. I love that, even in the personalities, too, the designs help, but the personalities, Zitz, I think it's weird that they made Zitz the leader. I always kind of assumed Rash was, but, I guess it doesn't really matter who is. But, yeah, I like that Pimple is so much bigger than the others. Rash has the armbands, the sunglasses. Zitz has the belts around him. But, this is also the first time they talk. This is the first time they really have personalities beyond video game protagonist.
Aside from the ill-fated Battletoads cartoon.
Oh, jeez.
Which I've never seen. In preparation for this episode, I actually pulled it up on YouTube and I shut it off fairly quickly. It's nice to know. It's actually reassuring to know that another rare property has had an abysmal cartoon adaptation. In my opinion, no shade meant for all you fans out there of the Donkey Kong Country show. But all the same, I am going to muster up now that I'm actually invested more in Battletoads, now that a Battletoads game is DKU, I feel like I need to bone up on the Battletoads. Obviously, when I say a Battletoads game is finally DKU, obviously a lot of the Battletoads games in Rare Replay, which is a DKU game, could count, but they're not. You can't retroactively make a game DKU. So anyway,
it really is a Star Fox situation where the prior Battletoads games are not DKU, but this one is.
We acknowledge the prior Battletoads games as being canon, absolutely, but are they part of the DKU? No. So people do not understand our weird rules for what we cover, but just trust me on this. All right, Captain Bones is in the game. We have to cover this, and I'm proud to cover it.
That's very reassuring.
All right, well, the gameplay, the meat of the game. We've been talking about aesthetics. We've been talking about tone. Let's talk about the gameplay. Does the gameplay hold up? Will it please a fan of classic Battletoads, even if they're not on board with the overtly comedic tone or the presentation of the arts? Will the gameplay scratch that itch? As someone who was never a hardcore Battletoads fan, I don't feel like I'm qualified to answer that. All I can say is what I think about this game. But Dustin, what about you? Like, what are your experiences with Battletoads prior to this?
So before this, the only Battletoads game I had played as a child was the Genesis version of the original.
It's so weird. Okay, it's just weird to think that, Rare had games on the Genesis, because I don't want to be one of those Rare fans, right? But I do think of Rare as being the Nintendo studio for the 90s, and, Rare really began with Donkey Kong Country, and sure, they had games before that, but Rare really began with Donkey Kong Country. And then you're like, no, they had a game on the Genesis, like, concurrent, like, with development of Donkey Kong Country. What are you talking about? Oh, okay. But, the Genesis Battletoads, okay.
Yeah, it's basically just like the NES one. I was talking to our good friend Jeff Onen a while back.
Oh, Jeff Onen, the one who's mastered the Topian language.
Yeah, that one. That's what he'll be most known for. But he was saying that he considers the Genesis one to be the definitive version of that Battletoads. Since, A, it looks better than the NES one, B, it sounds better, and, this is subjective, but it also...
No.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I don't think I've subjected to say the games on the Genesis sounded better than the NES.
Yeah. But it also, from what I heard, he said it also has an exclusive stage in it.
Ooh.
And, I can't speak for that stage. The extent of my knowledge of the Genesis one is I remember playing the first level. But then recently with Rare Replay, I have played both Battletoads games in that. I did beat both of them. Battletoads Arcade is significantly easier. Since, at the end of the day, it's just, it's an arcade beat 'em up, but since you don't have to put quarters in, you can just go forever and ever and ever. The Battletoads game on the NES, I don't know if you've heard this, Hyle, but that game's not the easiest game out there.
Yeah, no, it's fucking brutal. And like I said, that challenge was what turned me off. Like, my speed at that age was the Super Mario Brothers. Like, that was the level, I could just about beat Super Mario Brothers and all of its sequels up through Super Mario World. But you give me anything harder than that, and yeah, I'm not going to do it. I think I could beat the NES game Monster in My Pocket. Not much else, but And then I just doubted my own skills. It was like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, well, I'm not that good, so I'm going to use Game Genie to see all the good bits, right? Yeah. And I think I even used the Game Genie on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game, which was a port of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade game. but like, I don't think I ever actually beat that. Just, using my own skills. It was really Donkey Kong Country that made me rethink how I can actually play a video game, made me believe in myself, and gave me a little bit of self-esteem. But 1991 through 1994, the height of the original Battletoads era, no way, no how.
Yeah, and no shame in that, because I did beat Battletoads NES on Rare Replay, but only because it has all those cheats.
Yeah.
I would never want to actually play this game without those cheats. It just wouldn't happen. One thing I am more familiar with is, the infamous Turbo Tunnel section in the NES game.
Of course.
In Rare Replay, they have those snapshots, and one of those snapshots is an endless turbo tunnel. So every time you beat it, it just loops again, and you just have to see how long you can survive. And I think my time on it was like 9 minutes. And I'd really like to go back being on this Battletoads kick makes me want to go back and say, I could beat 9 minutes.
Yeah, I will say that when I'm done with Battletoads 2020, I'm definitely gonna be playing the Battletoads games in Rare Replay, because it's... And yeah, I'm shallow and superficial, and yeah, the fact that this game is DKU is probably making me a little bit more invested in it than I would be otherwise. But damn it, I'm invested in it, so I'm kind of like jazzed up, just like Star Fox Adventures made me care more about the Star Fox cast, and they're always going to have a place in my heart, even if like future Star Fox games aren't DKU, if they don't have Crystal or Tricky or anything. I'm still going to have an affection for the cast that I wouldn't otherwise. This newfound like love of Battletoads for me. Like, I want to go back and really get into the old games and give them the shot now that I'm an old man and not a scared little baby boy. Maybe I'll be good at them, right? And even if I'm not good at them, because I'm notoriously bad at games, even if I'm not good at them, I at least want to give them their due and try. And I can always use the rewind feature.
Yeah, luckily Rare made it very accessible to people.
Yeah, I know, like, especially like Kev Bayless, he's like a big proponent, like, games should be brutal. And I keep associating Kev Bayless because I had a nightmare about him last night. Okay, so in the news, I don't know if you follow world affairs much, but Vladimir Putin just had like one of the leading opposition members in Russia poisoned. He drank poison tea and poisoned by Putin's operatives. And so I was reading something about that before I went to bed, and I dreamt that Kev Bayless poisoned my Mountain Dew Baja Blast at Taco Bell. I'm not making this up, by the way. This is an authentic Hyle Russell dream. Because I was showering praise on the new Battletoads, and I thought, I don't know what Kev Bayless's opinions on the new Battletoads are, but in my dream, he didn't like it, and he thought it was like sacrilegious towards Battletoads. And I recorded this episode with you, Dustin, and then I went to Taco Bell to get a Mountain Dew Baja Blast, and Kevin Bayless's operatives poisoned me, and I was in the hospital dying.
Oh, no.
And then I woke up, and I was like, oh, shit. Like, what the hell kind of dream is that? So apologies to Kev Bayless for implicating him in my nightmares.
Hyle was victim number one in terms of Kev Bayless's reaction to Battletoads in Hyle's dream.
And Cameron points out in a live stream that Kev Bayless has been very supportive of it on Twitter, which I imagined he would be. So this was just like this nightmare that came out of nowhere. I'm like, why am I dreaming of Kev Bayless of all things? And why am I dreaming that he is going to poison me for my podcast where I mostly talk about Captain Bones? Anyway, apologies, Kev Bayless. Apologies to the fine people at Taco Bell. And no opinion on Vladimir Putin because I don't want my website brought down again this election year. So... and Andre is also in a live stream, and he's screaming, I was in the middle of typing, I hope the thing of yours he poisoned was Baja Blast as a joke. It was, and I'm glad I am that predictable.
It's 100% on brand for Hyle.
Even my dreams are on brand. What can I say? I am just a vapid, predictable man at this point in my life. What I really like about Battletoads, though, the gameplay is like the beat 'em up style. It is hard to wrap my head around the combination of moves because I haven't played a game in a very long time. I think Bleeding Edge is the last game I've played, which was this year, but I've not mastered Bleeding Edge in any sense. But I don't really play games that have this much in the way of button combinations or that require this much button mashing when you don't know what to do. And so this was kind of a steep learning curve for me. And I played it, and I've been playing it, I'm not ashamed to admit this, in tadpole difficulty because I just want to experience the game and get a handle on the fundamentals of it before I challenge myself any more than I need to. But even in tadpole mode, it's a little hard at times. What mode were you playing it in?
I've been playing it on Toad, and that's also what the Idaho crew was playing it on for the stream.
Okay. Because yeah, it is challenging, and I feel like the difficulty level has been preserved. Yeah,
I would say it's definitely not as hard as the NES one, but you know, of course that's a good thing. I wouldn't put myself through that again.
Yeah, I think like there have been concessions made for the modern era, and like I was talking about Kev Bayless poisoning me, and I lost the plot there. But I was thinking, he's heavily associated with Battletoads, and he's also a proponent of like games should be hard, and he's responsible for that infamous quill in Ukulele in Tribal Stack Tropics that's just hiding around the corner. Just with no visual cues, no clues whatsoever, around the corner from, ironically, Shovel Knight, known associate of the Battletoads. But, I think some concessions have been made for the modern. It's still very hard, and I haven't played it in the hardest difficulty, obviously, so I imagine that is just a sheer nightmare if you're not expertly skilled at the game. But the thing is, I was getting frustrated early on, trying to like remember all the moves. I was even struggling with like the move where you like lap up the flies to give yourself health. I was like, wait, I'm sticking out my tongue, but I'm not getting the flies. What am I doing wrong? And I was getting very like frustrated, not with the game, but more so with myself for not being able to remember like the button combination I needed to do. But as I played, as I progressed through the carnival, I found myself getting the hang of it, and I eventually just gave up and I started button mashing, right? And then through button mashing, I rediscovered how to do it, and then it started to become more intuitive. So by the time I got to the boss, the first boss of the game, I felt like I had a good handle of what I was supposed to do.
Yeah, I think one thing this game could use is maybe there's not that many combos, but I still feel like it could have maybe like a combo move list in there somewhere. Because like most of the Toads have the same moves. You do like X and then Y, and you'll do a certain move. But then they each have a special move where you do like standard attack. You press X a certain number of times, and it's different for each Toad, and then press B, and then each one has their own different move they can do. Like my favorite is Rash. You press X 5 times and then B, and then a curtain goes over Rash, and then the curtain opens and he's playing an arcade cabinet for Battletoads Arcade.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. It's awesome that they have those moves, but it takes some figuring out. I was like, how did I do that move? I pressed X so many times. I don't remember what I pressed. If you have like individual moves for each one, I think they could still use some sort of listing that lets you know exactly what you can do with each Toad.
For sure. I found myself pressing pause numerous times to like read the move list and then walking away not knowing anything more, because they give you like the very, very rudimentary moves when you press pause, but nothing more advanced than that. Even things like, like you're just like, oh yeah, aim, but wait, aim, but how do I combine them to latch onto that thing with my tongue or do this? Eventually you get the hang of it and it just becomes second nature. And I feel like if anybody picks up the game and it just seems like too much, have some patience, because you will get the hang of it. Even somebody who's notoriously bad at video games like me has basically gotten the hang of it. I still can't do the more advanced combos just, off the top of my fingers, but in time, I'm sure I will. And that's something that I found quite delightful with the game is I want to get better at it. It's not discouraging me. It's actually inspiring me to kind of put my nose down to the controller and get better at it, because it is fun. And what really makes it fun for me is it's not just beat 'em up stages. Just like the original Battletoads broke things up with, the turbo bikes, this one does it as well with all sorts of big and small breaks in the action, like chapters in the acts that give you a little bit more variety, and even things in the regular beat 'em up levels too. You've got those like areas where you have to come to reroute circuits to open a door, and then my personal favorite is just the stupid ass hacking sequences, which are portrayed in like the very Hollywood dumb style of hacking, where things are represented visually with like a Battletoad's head, and you've got to like avoid the traps, and it becomes like something like an old school Atari game almost, while the Battletoad, quote unquote, hacks the security. It's that kind of humor that I really appreciate in this game. The very, very on the nose, dumb portrayal of tropes. And, but I also found it very fun to actually figure out these little puzzles, these little mazes. So I appreciated that. But then, of course, we already talked about the whole menial job, sequence, which was supposed to be boring. And supposed to be monotonous and tedious, but then you also have the turbo bikes are back, and they're very fun. They remind me a little bit of the minecart sequences in Tropical Freeze, the ones that shift perspective a little bit, where the minecart is actually behind. I think it's 4-2 is the minecart level I'm thinking of, but just evading the traps will feel secondhand to any Battletoads novice if you've at least played Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. And then there's just stupid ass shit like Toad Shambo, which Toad Shambo is the Battletoads version of Rock Paper Scissors, which what is it? There's a trumpet, or
there's instrument, appliance, puppet, I believe.
Okay, yeah. And they're just like, oh, we need to settle this Toad Shambo, and then that is the entire act right there, Toad Shambo, where you're playing this nonsensical version of Rock Paper Scissors, and that's it.
Yeah, I think the best part about that is you don't even have to win.
No, you don't. Like, I was like, oh no, I lost, and I think there's like an achievement attached to winning, and of course it tracks like your best score or whatever, but. Yeah, you just move on from it, and then it's that level, that balance of actual fine-tuned beat 'em up gameplay and then other shit that really makes this game a gem for me. Because if it was just the beat 'em up stages, like mixed in with the turbo bikes, I would be like, okay, it's a Battletoads game, but then they introduce the other stuff that's really just there for context and flavor. It's not really engaging in any way, but similar to Conker's Bad Fur Day, I think we're going to compare it to another Rare game here, Conker's Bad Fur Day. I think it almost plays like an interactive cinematic experience. And Conker's, like, that's very dismissive of Conker's Bad Fur Day, even though we've made that comparison before. Like, Conker's Bad Fur Day isn't a rigidly crafted platformer like the Banjo games, where it's like 100% like crunchy and precise, crunchy to steal a term from the Geek Critique. But the experience of Conker's Bad Fur Day makes up for it. It's not supposed to be that. It's supposed to be introducing these set pieces, and I think Battletoads sort of takes a page from that, where you have these breaks in the action that are just there to enhance the experience, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually thinking the same thing last night. Conker's Bad Fur Day is a very good comparison, in that there's so many different gameplay styles, and not everyone is going to land with everybody. It is kind of a jack of all trades, master of none, but that doesn't make... I think there's a couple things in it that I'm not super into, but those come in later chapters, so I won't get into them. But
yeah, we're going to be talking about Battletoads a little bit more. I don't know in what formats, I don't know in what episodes, but this is our first impressions. I imagine after I've beaten the game, and a lot of you have beaten the game, we'll come back to it then, and we'll have some firmer final thoughts on the whole experience. Because honestly, like, I don't want to spoil anything beyond Act 1 right now, and I feel like Act 1 is huge enough alone to discuss, and really, I was like, that's a good stopping point for first impressions, really. But yeah, like, I think, you say like not everything lands with you in these modes, and I feel like that's an important point to bring back to my final thoughts of this episode. But before we get to that, I do want to discuss the music a little bit. Now, the music, it's directed by David Halston, I believe that's how you pronounce it. It's appropriately early 90s. It's kind of like metal-esque.
Lots of guitars.
Kind of, yeah, lots of guitars. But there's also lots of remixes from the David Wise originals from the original Battletoads. And I thought the music worked well. I know people are probably upset that they didn't get David Wise back, but I think it's fine with, like, I think I'm glad they credited David Wise. I'll say that much, because one of my pet peeves with when Nintendo repurposes music from past composers is they never give a credit to those composers. It's like, well, we own the music. We don't need to credit that composer if they didn't work on this game. Like, David Wise didn't get a credit in Donkey Kong Country Returns, even though, or Evelyn Fisher didn't get a credit, even though the songs were remixes of their work, by and large, minus some originals. And then, of course, Smash is notorious for not crediting the original composers, even if their songs are in the game just straight up ripped. Like, Robin Beanland doesn't get a credit in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, even though Funky's Fugue is in it. So I really do appreciate that they did credit David Wise, and I think the new music is great. I think it's perfectly in tune with the original.
Yeah, I agree. It's great, but at the same time, it hasn't really sunken in with me yet, just because the game is so, you really got to focus on what you're doing in this game. So it didn't really give me a lot of time to just stop and listen to the music, except for in the Turbo Bike section. That tune's great.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think ultimately, like, of course, the main theme of the game is a remix of the classic Battletoads theme by David Wise, and I think it's always going to overshadow any of the new music, unfortunately. And I don't think there's anything quite as catchy as that song. The da-na-na, da-na-na-na-na, we all know it. But I don't think, anything tops it. But then again, I don't think anything in the original Battletoads games topped that song either. Yeah. So, what are you going to do? like the original Battletoads theme is so perfect that I'm glad they didn't discard it, but also it kind of will overshadow anything else. I
will say it's kind of weird that it's great that the theme is there, but one of the other more iconic songs is the Pause theme, and that's just some beats, but I think that's kind of just as iconic as the game itself at this point, and the actual theme music. I would have liked it to be in there somewhere, like maybe like loading screens, pause screen, but not a big deal.
Yeah. Let's talk about couch co-op, because this is something I cannot speak to, and this is the other major reason I thought you'd be perfect for this episode, because you can't social distance from your roommates, from the Idaho crew, from the enclave of folk that make up this collective of DK Viners, and you have played couch co-op. You streamed couch co-op on our Twitch channel just a couple days ago. And I kind of envy that, because, for me, Battletoads was a game, or at least Battletoads Double Dragon was a game I played with my childhood friend. And, it would be great to play this game with the likes of Jeff and Cameron and Gibbon and you and Briegel and Steve from Rare Gamer and anybody, all my friends around the world I would love to play this game with, and I can't, because there's no online multiplayer. And that is honestly, it was my biggest gripe with it when it was announced, and it still is my biggest gripe with it now. There are ways around it using Steam that Rare is not really promoting. But if I want to play it from the comfort of my Xbox in front of my TV with my friends, I can't. And that's not a deal breaker for me. Let me just say, like, this is my biggest, honest, only gripe. Only huge gripe with the game is that I can't play with my friends. And it's 2020, and I would give, and have given Nintendo shit for this in the past too. I understand why it's not available. I understand budgetarily why it's not available. And I get it. And it's not a deal breaker for me because I'm very much enjoying the game by my lonesome. But in the back of my head, I was like, oh man, it would be great to play this with my DK Vine buddies. And it's just weird to me because, I play Sea of Thieves every week. And that's how I hang out with my friends. And it's just weird to have a new Rare game where that's not an option.
Yeah, it's too bad, especially given the state that the world is in right now. But, obviously,
yes.
obviously, hindsight's 2020. They obviously didn't know we were going to have all this shit go down, hopefully, anyway. So yeah, it sucks. You can't play it online. Maybe in the future I don't want to say it's likely it'll get patched in, but it would be cool if they could somehow patch it in.
It would be great.
Yeah. I'm not holding my breath for it, of course.
Neither am I. And like I said, this will be a central part of my ending thesis here, but It is my only actual complaint with the game. Like, oh, Rash is wearing a diaper full of shit. That's not a complaint. That's just like, that's a bit much,
that's a
right?
Weird little thing.
I don't like the way the Dark Queen looks compared to how she previously looked. I understand the change, but I wish they would have done more with it.
I will say, even though I'm not the biggest fan of her design, I do think her personality more than makes up for it.
Oh, yeah. Writing and the voice acting, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great, and I like her character. So, like I said, that's a complaint, but it's a minor one. This is my only complaint that's more than just something that's petty. And that being said, I can't hold it against the game and say, well, the whole game is trash because I can't play with my friends online. Do I still enjoy the game? Absolutely. Yeah. And is it still fun in single player, even if you don't have, your friends available in a quarantine zone to play it with? It's enjoyable as a single player experience. And so I just was watching you play it with Adam and Andrew on Thursday, and I was like, oh man, I'm envious. I am envious of them right now. So what was it like? If you're one of the lucky few who have been quarantined with your friends, what is couch co-op like?
So, couch co-op is great, and it's great because I played couch co-op with them, and then afterwards I was playing solo, so I could kind of compare them. Certain things in the game are much easier in co-op, and certain things are much easier solo.
Really?
Yeah, like even right from the get-go, the beat-em-up segments, much easier to get, like, you get ranked as you fight, and you need to chain up combos, and if you're playing single player, you really have to keep those in mind. But if you're playing with friends, you can kind of divide the workout a little bit. If you're playing single player, your combo points they won't be as high, and I think your grade even starts to go down if you use the same moves too much, and the same Toad too much. You want to switch out to the other Toads to keep things fresh.
I didn't realize that, because a lot of times I'll just get in the groove with one of the Toads, and I'll be like, okay, I'm just going to stick with them until they get knocked out, and then I'll go to the next. I didn't realize you were supposed to switch them out.
Yeah, here's a question for you before I get back to couch co-op. Are there any of the Toads that you feel you had more fun with? Any that gelled more with your play style? Because they all do play differently.
They all play differently. I find myself using Zitz the most. And I don't know why that is. I
think I can only speak for myself. So I mostly use Rash, but that's just because he's my favorite of the Toads. He has those sunglasses and all.
And he shits in a diaper.
Exactly.
Yeah, you don't have to explain to me.
But Zitz, I think, actually is the most fun to play as because his attacks are so fast. You can chain so many combos. You can do attacks and just stay in the air. I think I stayed in the air for like 10 seconds just doing all his moves and hitting the various enemies and stuff just because he attacks so fast. But he does lose health faster than the other ones. So each Toad does have their pros and cons.
Oh. Yeah, the second Toad I use the most is Pimple, and I like him because he's slow and lumbering like Donkey Kong.
Yeah. I think of the three, Pimple's probably the one I don't use as much, just because his slow and lumbering playstyle just isn't super my thing. I like doing those fast attacks. Sure. But, I still like them. I still use them when I can, especially since, you do gotta switch off with them. But, yeah, with 3-player couch co-op, everyone takes control of one Toad, and that pressure's off. You can just attack however you see fit, and it's a lot easier to get those combos when you can divide out the enemies between 3 people. Because let me tell you, some of those, especially in like the carnival level, all the ice cream thrower guys, the electricity popcorn guys, it's a nightmare.
It is. Yeah, that was the part that I was enjoying it, and that was where I was starting to get in the groove a little bit, but I was like, okay, so I was like, take out the electricity guys. No, wait, take out the ice cream guys. Well, no, if I stay out of the water, I don't have to worry about the electricity guys as much, so I should focus on the ice cream guys. No, the ice cream guys are standing in the water, so I need to take out the popcorn guys. So anyway, yeah, playing solo, weirdly, one of the titles it reminded me of, titles, plural, are the Batman Arkham games. Because there's a lot of swinging back and forth, especially in the carnival, where you have to switch between the foreground and the background. So you have to use your tongue as like a grappling hook. And then you're like working on these chain combos, beating up baddies. And it felt very reminiscent of the Arkham games where you're like swinging off gargoyles, because apparently every building in Gotham City has gargoyles on the interior. But, yeah. As far as a modern example goes, I guess the Arkham games are a modern version of the beat 'em up games a little bit, but of course I went to grab by the Ghoulies when I was making modern comparisons, because that's how sheltered and precious I am. I want to play couch co-op, and I think like the only way it'll ever happen playing it with my friends is if an experience like E3, if we play it together on Steam or something, if there's ever an E3 again. But like I said, biggest gripe with the game, but I also understand that this is a low budget game, and it just wasn't in the cards to invest in the infrastructure for online co-op. It's a shame, and it's a shame that it came out in the year of a pandemic where we're all encouraged to stay the hell away from each other.
Yeah, it's too bad. It's not the best timing for this game.
Rare predicted the year 2020 in Perfect Dark Zero, and they certainly didn't have anything about coronavirus in there either, so how are they to know? Like I said, I've given Nintendo shit for this in the past, and I have to air the same grievance here. But ultimately, it doesn't detract from my enjoyment of the game one bit. And that's what I wanted to come down to in the end, is that, I hear a lot of people since last year when this game got its first full-length trailer, I've heard a lot of people say, like, I don't like this about it, it's shit. Or I don't like this about it, I hope they cancel it. And it just brings to mind my feelings on the current state of criticism and critique in any fandom, really, but just online culture in general. If something doesn't tick all of these boxes, increasingly arbitrary boxes in our head, if something isn't considered a masterpiece, then it's considered garbage, not worth our time. And it's fine having high standards. Trust me, I'm not discouraging having high standards or a sense of, wanting the best. But when we use that as a way to harm our own enjoyment of honestly great things that might have a few flaws, then we're doing nobody any favors. And I don't know. I feel like this isn't really the time and place to like preach this, because this is the end of a 2.5 hour podcast and everybody's exhausted because we spent the first 90 minutes talking about Captain Bones. But I think that, like, is the new Battletoads perfect? No. But was it ever supposed to be perfect? Like, should the new Battletoads game have such a high mark of standards that we just, if we don't get perfection, we walk away from it entirely and don't give it its fair shake? I think that's ludicrous. I think this is a great game. Perfect game? No. Great game? Yes. And I'm having a blast with it. And it kind of breaks my heart to see people not giving it a chance. And hey, if you've given it a chance and you find it's not for you, that's fine too. At least you gave it a chance. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm imploring people to do, is give this a chance. You might find it's not for you, but you might find it's actually quite surprising and delightful.
Yeah. I see a lot of people online lightening up on it, and I don't know what it was. But yeah, like when this game was first revealed, I saw a lot of people mostly hating on the art style, and, I don't want to say you guys are wrong.
Can I ask you a question, Dustin? Can I ask you a question? And I keep asking this, but I keep forgetting the answer. I see it referred to as the Cal art style. Dustin, what is the Cal art style?
Okay, so the term Cal art style is used by certain people. It's not the best term, but it's used as a blanket term for... So a lot of animated shows these days have similar design sensibilities. A lot of the talent on these shows kind of go on to get their own shows, and that art style bleeds into them sometimes. And shows like Gravity Falls, Steven Universe, I think a lot of them stem from like Adventure Time, but yeah, it's just a blanket statement for like modern shows that have similar design sensibilities like that. I will say I don't think Battletoads falls in line with that at all. I don't know why people would call it Cal art.
Like you're bringing up like Gravity Falls and Adventure Time, and as somebody who is not someone who's ever watched those shows, I'm at least familiar with the way they look from, just cultural osmosis, seeing stills and videos of them. And I'm like, it doesn't really feel like Battletoads is that.
Yeah. It's used, it's also, I should point out, it's a term used, it's meant to be like a derogatory term for those shows. Like, it's used as like an insult these shows all look the same.
Obviously, yeah. But I don't see it so much with Battletoads, and I was hoping since you're the expert here, I was hoping to pick your brain and explain it to me.
Yeah, it's a bad term to use, not just for this, but for those shows. If someone uses the term Cal art style, bad. Don't do that, people.
I'm gonna Google it right now. I'm gonna Google image search it and see what comes up, just to get a broader.
Yeah, you'll get what I mean.
Okay, yeah, but the third image down, it has like a bunch of character heads. Yeah, apparently in this style, what they refer to this style.
That's the big one that gets brought up a lot.
And then stamped over it says "Stop." You're all wrong.
You're all wrong. And I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like, when I see these shows, they're great shows, but even I'm kind of like, I'd like something that looks a little different from time to time, and I do think Battletoads looks totally different. Obviously, at the end of the day, people should be able to make their shows how they want them to look. That's the end of the line for that one. But Yeah, I don't really get where people are coming from. I guess just because it looks like a cartoon.
Yeah, but I think that works for what Battletoads are. I think, yeah, totally. Would it have worked if it was something like realistically rendered, like similar to the way Rash looks on the Rare Replay box art, similar like how he looked in Killer Instinct? Would something like that work? I think for the tone they were going for, no. But, you know, I'm open to seeing it the other way. And I think, you know, speaking of Kev Bayless and David Wise, you know, they were working on their Salamandos project, which is kind of a spiritual successor to Battletoads from, you know, original hands who worked on it. But it's like right now it's kind of a nebulous thing. But if they ever get a video game for that off the ground, I wonder if Salamandos will be taking its cue from like being a more, I don't want to say grittier take, because gritty's not the right word, but less overtly animated and more like realistically proportioned. I don't know, but it's interesting to watch, and I'm really, now that I've kind of got that Battletoads itch for the first time in my life, I'm also a lot more interested in Salamandos to see what they do with that. So I think it's interesting that we have some, even more than just this in the works if you're interested in Battletoads. But yeah, maybe that will like strike a different tone than what this went for, but I think this is perfectly valid. And I think I really enjoy the way they came about it. Because if somebody came to me a couple years ago and said, hey, Hyle Russell from off of DK Vine, we arbitrarily, for no reason whatsoever, have decided you're the one who's going to dictate what the new Battletoads game is going to be.
The world's biggest Battletoads fan.
Obviously, you run a Rare fan site. You must be the world's biggest Battletoads fan. So if they'd come to me and said, what do we want? What do you want to do? What do you think would be the appropriate way to bring back Battletoads? I probably wouldn't have done anything like this. I would have done something closer to probably what a lot of fans are out there screaming for, is like realistic proportion, something like the original Ninja Turtles movies. That's not wrong, but this isn't wrong either. And I find this game is delightfully surprising, and I'm enjoying it. And so I think my only mission statement here is, if you're on the fence about the way this game looks for whatever reason, that's fine. Give it a shot and lower your expectations. Like, I'm not saying like lower them as in expect the worst. I'm saying walk in with an open mind, and maybe it will tickle your fancy after all. It did me, and I didn't know what to expect. And I love it. So, yeah.
Let
me kick that soapbox away from me. You can still stand on it if you want. I'm done.
One thing I really like about this game is it is a much smaller scale game. And I know it's not made 100% by Rare. It's mainly Dlala Studios. But I like in the day and age when Rare's efforts are focused more on like Sea of Thieves, Everwild and stuff, you can still get smaller games that they're involved in like this. Not every game has to be this massive adventure.
Well, that's what's great about this game, and what I think a lot of fans are kind of missing. This game is very much a Rare game. It's made with their direct input and oversight, but it's also a Dlala Studios game, and I think Dlala Studios is a studio to watch for sure. I think this proved they have what it takes, and this also opens up the path for where Rare is going to go into the future. They're going to make games. They're going to continue to support Sea of Thieves. They're going to make games like Everwild. They're probably not going to be focusing on their old IPs all that much. But what they can do is, if a studio comes to them with a good pitch, hey, we got this idea to bring back Battletoads. And if Rare's like, okay, we want to see you develop this, we're going to send somebody like Paul Collins over to the studio and work with you on shepherding this idea and see where it goes, then this is how we're going to get Rare IPs back in sequels. And I think Battletoads shows it can be done in a very clever way, in that it's evocative of games of the past, and it's done with Rare's supervision and stamp, but it can also go in new directions that surprise us. And so I think Battletoads is definitely, it makes sense for this to be the first one, right? Like, okay, so we've had Killer Instinct as a revived game. We've had Conquer and Project Spark, and Rare had say a little bit in both of those, but never to this extent where it is being branded as a co-Rare game, right? Like, so I think going forward, after Battletoads, it's been 26 years since a Battletoads game. Absolutely, let's get a Battletoads game out. We're probably going to get something like Perfect Dark. I'm sure that's going to be one of the games they're going to do in this arrangement. And yes, Banjo-Kazooie. I think it's only going to be a matter of time before we see Banjo-Kazooie in this style arrangement being developed by a studio, probably in the UK, but maybe, in the US or elsewhere, with Rare's oversight. And this is how we're going to get a new Banjo-Kazooie game. And when we did the Banjo 3E episode of the Kongversation in season 6, we're like, we need to talk about Banjo 3E. I said at the time, I am worried, like, if Rare would outsource it, if that would be the best thing. I think Rare should do it internally. I've changed my mind on that. And Battletoads really helped me change my mind on that. I think it makes the most sense to do it this way. And I think we're definitely going to see it. Maybe not the next one, but maybe the one after that. And I think now that Banjo-Kazooie have all this renewed interest, thanks to Smash Brothers, it's money on the table if they don't. So if you're interested in a new Banjo game, which I imagine a lot of you listening to the conversation are, I would recommend supporting Battletoads, because this is going to show Xbox Studios, this is going to show Microsoft that there is a market for doing things this way. So, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I totally agree. A lot of people love Killer Instinct for the Xbox One, but I would feel a little disappointed if it was a situation more like that, where Rare was more hands-off with a new Banjo. I think this situation with Battletoads would be perfect.
When Killer Instinct came out, I think Rare was at that weird state in their existence where they didn't know what they were anymore, and Xbox didn't know what they were anymore. And when Phil Spencer came in, and he had no, Rare's important, Rare's vital to our brand, let Rare be Rare. And I think now you wouldn't see such a hands-off thing. I think the Rare brand is important to Xbox for the first time, or at least has been the last 5 years, for the first time since they were bought out by Microsoft. And so I think Battletoads, the way they rolled it out as a Rare game, even though it was, co-developed by developed at Delilah, with Delilah staffers, I think, you're still going to see anything going forward as, no, that's a Rare property. We're not going to just take something from Rare and throw lip service like, oh yeah, that was a Rare property, but now this studio is doing it, and we're, Rare's making Kinect games. That's not going to be the case anymore. So, this is how we're going to get Banjo back, and just be patient. But also, I think, play Battletoads. Even if you don't like Battletoads, even if you just like Banjo-Kazooie, I think it's worth checking out to see maybe how another studio would approach Banjo-Kazooie. I'm not saying it would be done in this style, with this tone. Absolutely not. It's going to be a Banjo game, but you're going to get some, I think, evolution to it. And this might start spurring the imagination of what that might look like.
Yeah, I mean, the game's on Game Pass, so what have you got to lose?
Well, if you don't want to pay for Game Pass, but yeah, I would say Game Pass is definitely worth it at this point because you get all the rare games. It's also on Steam, so you know, even if you don't have an Xbox, you can play this on Steam. So yeah, I'm not saying you don't have any excuse. I would never say that.
Yeah. But you'll have a good time. You'll have a good time playing it, maybe, unless you don't, which is totally fine too.
Yep. It's fine. It's all fine.
Yeah, I don't want to come across as like, if you don't like this game, your complaints about it, what's wrong with you? No, complaints are totally valid. I'm not gonna. If someone doesn't like it, they don't like it. But you know, I think there's a lot there to like.
But you did just waste 2 hours and 35 minutes of your life, so,
yeah,
you know.
That's true.
There's that. All right, well, we'll see you next time for Character Witness, Captain Bones.
This has been a File 2 production.
¡Qué rico!